right, let's talk about the story of Samson. You've probably heard of him. He's this figure from the book of Judges, a guy blessed with like superhuman strength, but who was also cursed by some really profound weaknesses.
I mean, think about that for a second. It's such a classic idea, and Samson's life is pretty much the perfect example of this paradox. His story is this incredible mix of power, passion, and betrayal, and it all revolves around that one central question. So let's start at the very beginning.
So to really get Samson, you have to understand the world he was born into. At this point, Israel has been oppressed by their enemies, the Philistines, for 40 long years. People are desperate. They need a hero. And that's exactly when a divine promise is made.
And his story kicks off with a miracle. A divine messenger, an angel, shows up to the wife of a man named Manoah. Now, she hadn't been able to have children, and this angel tells her she's going to have a son who will begin to deliver Israel. But here's the thing that's really wild about this. The child is set aside for a special purpose before he's even conceived. He's supposed to be a Nazirite, someone who is literally set apart, totally dedicated to God right from birth. And this dedication wasn't just a title. It came with some super strict rules. These were sacred vows, the very source of his power. No wine, no cutting his hair, no touching dead bodies, and no eating unclean food. Seriously, you have to remember these vows because they are absolutely crucial to his entire story. So you've got this promised hero. How does he actually turn out? Well, as Samson gets older, this tension between his sacred duty and his, very human desires, it shows up almost right away. As a young man, we get our first real glimpse of this incredible gift. A lion attacks him, and the text says the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he just tears the lion apart with his bare hands. This is just raw, God-given power on full display.
And this is a huge but. Almost as soon as he shows us this divine power, he goes and breaks one of his most important vows. He goes back to the lion's carcass later, finds honey inside, and just eats it. By touching a dead body, he's already broken a core rule of being a Nazirite. This is our first major red flag.
And this right here, this perfectly sums up Samson's biggest problem. His whole purpose was to save his people, but his own desires were constantly pulling him in the other direction. He insists on marrying a Philistine woman, an enemy, and he keeps using his amazing strength not for some holy war, but just to settle his own personal scores.
And this habit of focusing on his own personal beefs instead of his actual mission, well, it kicks off this absolutely brutal and escalating cycle of violence between him and the Philistines. It all starts at his wedding. Samson tells a riddle to his Philistine buddies. When they can't figure it out, they threaten his new wife, and she gets the answer from him and gives them up. So in a rage, Samson goes to another town, kills 30 Philistine men, and uses their clothes to pay off his bet. And from there, it just completely spirals out of control. His father-in-law gives his wife to someone else, so Samson catches 300 foxes, ties their tails together with torches, and burns down all the Philistine fields. They retaliate by killing his wife and her father, and that, of course, just makes Samson want even more revenge. Okay, so all of this leads to maybe his most famous feat. His own people actually hand him over to the Philistines. But he breaks free, grabs the first thing he can find, the fresh jawbone of a donkey, and kills 1,000 soldiers with it. It's an epic display of power, for sure. But we have to remember, this is still about personal revenge, not about fighting for Israel.
For all his physical strength, Samson had one massive, fatal weakness. And that brings us to the climax of his story, and the woman who would finally bring him down, Delilah.
So Samson falls in love with Delilah, and the Philistine leaders see their chance. They go to her with an insane bribe. We're talking 1,100 pieces of silver from each of them, if she can just find out the secret to his strength. And Delilah gets right to work. 3 different times she asks him for his secret, and each time Samson lies, just kind of toying with her. But she does not give up. She keeps pressuring him day after day until he's just worn down. And finally, tragically, he cracks. He tells her the truth. His strength comes from his hair, the symbol of his vow to God. And the fallout from this, it's immediate, and it is absolutely catastrophic. While he's asleep, Delilah has his hair cut off. When the Philistines show up, he thinks he can fight them off like he always does. But the text says his strength left him. That final vow is broken, the divine power is gone, and the strongest man on earth is suddenly helpless. They capture him, blind him, and turn him into a slave.
And this is rock bottom for Samson. It's a moment of total and complete humiliation, but it also sets the stage for one last, earth-shattering act of redemption.
So the Philistines are throwing this huge festival to celebrate their victory over Samson, and they drag him out, blinded, to be the main event. He's a public spectacle, a joke, just a broken man who's a shadow of what he once was.
They put him between the two main pillars holding up the whole temple. And there, after a lifetime of relying on himself, Samson finally prays. He asks God for his strength back just one more time, to get revenge for his 2 eyes.
And you know what? God answers. Samson pushes on those pillars with everything he has left, and the entire temple comes crashing down. It kills him, but it also kills thousands of Philistines, more than he killed in his entire life. And this gets to the main takeaway of his story. Samson was a deeply, deeply flawed man. He pretty much failed his divine mission at every turn, and yet, God still managed to accomplish a divine purpose through his chaotic life.
So Samson's story really leaves us with this powerful question to chew on. It makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, purpose can be fulfilled not just in spite of our flaws, but sometimes even through them. Definitely something to think about. Thanks for listening.